most common misunderstanding, first and foremost, about wire fraud charges is that once the government brings a wire fraud charge, there are very few defenses, that you are essentially done for, that you have to start negotiating a plea immediately. Because there are so many ways to use the wires, there are so many different types, text messages, emails, everything that we do on a daily basis. This is one element of the crime. So people say, oh, I sent an email, I'm charged with wire fraud, they've got me. But there are other elements there. And the one element of wire fraud that is a very large focus and maybe the most common, I don't know if I would say misconception, but the one that is overlooked the most is the intent to defraud. The government has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt an intent to defraud. So it's not just that someone sent an electronic communication across state lines or international boundaries that caused somebody to depart or deprive them some sort of material loss or property. There has to be an actual knowing intent to do so. And there are many defenses to that. So a lot of times people with wire fraud feel like once the charge comes, they're out of luck because yes, they did send this text message and the government is calling it illegal. But there are several defenses to wire fraud, including good faith, mistake of fact, and lack of intent, non materiality of the actual conduct itself or the goal of the conduct. So I think people too often forget that there are various defenses to wire fraud, and that because it's wire fraud and because you're looking at 20 years and because they hear it all over the news, that they're without hope and without recourse. And that's simply not the case. Healthcare fraud absolutely has evolved, and it always has. Okay? Especially in South Florida, where I'm based, but around the country as well, fraud has gone through certain stages. It was a big push originally with sober homes that turned into durable medical equipment or DME, which is actually making quite a comeback here in South Florida and around the country. We saw a lot of genetic testing, mostly with cancer genetic testing. And now, where we're really seeing the most prosecutions are some leftover COVID 19 healthcare fraud prosecutions. And a new area, well, the concept isn't so new, but what is exploding and soon to continue exploding is in the wound care field. And when I say wound care, I mean the providing of a skin substitute off, or sometimes a amniotic fluid that is used to treat wounds. And Medicare or Medicaid is reimbursing very large amounts of money for wound care or skin substitute products. And what we see in each trend when it comes to healthcare fraud is, what is Medicare currently reimbursing the highest for? Is it an easy test or an easy lab or easy medical product to acquire and to apply? And who is the target community? So wound care is very, very much not only on the horizon, but here now. And we're seeing a lot of focus from the Department of Justice and from the Center of Medicaid Services, Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, with a focus on wound care itself. So that's really what we're on the lookout for the next several years moving forward. When it comes to billing and when it comes to, which is very commonly a factor in a healthcare fraud case, whether the coder is being charged or the biller, actual medical billing company is being charged, or the lab owner or durable medical equipment owner is being charged for improper billing or lack of medical necessity for the codes that they are submitting, that's always going to be a focus of a healthcare fraud prosecution. But when it comes to sloppy billing versus actual fraud, the focus is going to be criminal intent. And that is really always going to be the focus of a healthcare case. Medicare and Medicaid and the services such as healthcare, Medicare Advantage, Part C, that are providing these services through private insurers, their rules and regulations are changing all the time in response to various loopholes, individuals who are allegedly targeting certain types of products to maximize reimbursements in a lawful and sometimes unlawful way. But sloppy billing really turns into fraud when it comes to actual criminal intent. There has to be knowledge, whether it be in the form of a conspiracy with a co conspirator to accomplish a healthcare fraud. There has to be knowledge that you are, in fact, attempting, at least, if not actually, violating the rules of a federal healthcare program, and you have the intent to cause that program loss. So at the end of the day, like most charges, even though healthcare cases and cases involving improper billing can be very sophisticated and very complex, it still does come down to criminal intent. When DOJ is looking at a healthcare case, it usually starts with the agent, and this is most commonly the FBI or Health and Human Services Offices of Inspector General, or we more commonly say HHSOIG, sometimes working in tandem, but usually HHSOIG, which enforces CMS or the Medicare and Medicaid rules and regulations, and then joins with FBI on the criminal aspect of things. When we're talking about an executive versus lower level, they do very much and very commonly are trying to target lower level individuals first. They want the whale, so to speak. They want the individual at the top, but they are going to try to bully. They're going to try to scare the lower level employee within this healthcare organization or healthcare provider that is involved in a company that bills a federal healthcare program, whether it be Medicare A, B, C, D, or Medicaid, or some other companies that aren't as common, such as TRICARE for veterans, but they're trying to work their way up. That is generally across the board how the Department of Justice and the various United States attorneys' offices and investigative bodies are building these cases is start small, bully them, scare them, work their way up the chain to the executive. So that is definitely a trend, and it's something that not only the executives but the lower level employees have to look out for.